So this is the typical project's process flow. We create a project, we define the needs and everything. Within a project, we define fund sources, we put the scheduled list of tasks for the project, we invite users. In addition, if there are any project specific expenses, any risks, issues identified, all of that is captured as part of your project management. Now let's go towards the construction part of it, which begins, before that, we need to determine a budget for the project, a forecast spread, which gives you a linear distribution of how the budget is going to be utilized across the duration of the project. That will also be determined. Once you have determined all of it, you then move to the actual construction management, which begins with the bid process. A bid is created, and when a bid is created, it is a bid estimate rather, like an engineer will create a bid estimate with all the related bid items to be part of it. Once that is created, the engineer's estimate will be let out for different contractors to bid against. Once the bids are received, submitted by the contractors, those bids are evaluated and an appropriate submitted bid is awarded. That means a contractor is awarded for that bid. Once a contractor is awarded, then starts the actual contract management. In the system, all the contract related details are set up. The awarded bid details are imported into the contract so that the contract items are reflecting the awarded bid items. Once the items are pulled into the contract, the progress of the work, because once you have pulled it in, you have approved, you have locked the items, and you have given the confirmation to the contractors that yes, the work can start now. Once the work starts, there needs to be some kind of a progress tracking, daily progress tracking. Item posted by the contractors need to be evaluated so that the payments can be released to the contractors based on the work completed by the contractors. All of that would be managed under contract management. We would also be handling change management. In between, if there is any change that needs to be approved, so there is a change request that has been initiated and that needs to be approved, and the contract details need to be updated based on that. That will also be done through part of the contract management, contract change management. Then the project process continues. Payments are done. All of that is completed. And once the work is done, the contract is closed. Contract is closed. Any related pending expenses related to purchase orders and expenses are handled at the project level as well. If there are multiple contracts in the project, once all the contracts within the project are closed, the project can also get closed. So this is a typical project process flow. From the conceptual point of view, do you have any questions?
I don't see any in the chat as well, Leonard.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Then let me go ahead and explain that in the system directly. So I'm going back to the projects module. I'm opening the Cover Street extension that I created. So this is a project that is fully loaded, by the way. So when you create your project, you start uploading documents based on the stage that you are in. All of that you would start doing. And when you go to project phases, you would define your phase. This again is coming from library. These can be the different phases in your project: planning, feasibility, design. For each phase, your project start and end date you have given here. This is coming from your project duration. When you defined your project, you provided the start date and end date, and that is what is coming here. Based on the start and end date, if you want to spread out each phase duration, you provide your start date and end date for each of these phases. Once you do that and save it, your project phases are added as part of your schedule. So that is what you're doing in schedule. So in schedule, you have your project phases added as containers. Under each container, you can add your individual tasks, subtasks, provide start and end date for each of these tasks. And based on that, your duration will get calculated. In the schedule, there are various things that you can do. You can add these tasks individually, or you can import Excel. You can export this whole thing into an Excel template, add the tasks there, and import the whole task list back into Essentials. And once you do that, you will have all the tasks listed. for the project manager to start tracking the progress of each task against that. So once the task starts, the actual start finish date will be entered. The predecessors, those things would have also been entered as part of your task management. And your Gantt view. This is the Gantt view, progress tracking. So this particular task is completed. You see a line here which indicates that this task is completed. There is a predecessor connection, start to finish, so finish to start. That's why you see the star arrow mark. This is very similar to a MSP. Microsoft project, same way these tasks are listed. And once you manage this task, I mean, this is a separate activity that a project manager does. And they can always take a snapshot of these tasks to have a baseline comparison. And accordingly, they can tweak the task durations as they move forward. So this is scheduling. And each task you can assign resources as well. So when you assign resources, you would need to know whether you are overutilizing a resource, underutilizing a resource, or optimally utilizing a resource. If you have assigned resources for these tasks, you will be able to notice that in your task resource Gantt. In here, for different tasks, you have the resources assigned, the role that they're playing, whether they are overutilized or under, optimally utilized, the color of the bar will tell you. And when you hover the mouse over it, it will tell you start time and end time of that task. The percentage utilization for that particular user using in that role is 70%, which is optimal. If there is 100, this is utilization percentage is 14.89. So it's pretty low. So this person is underutilized. 80%. So this is overutilized. So likewise, you will be able to have a visual mapping as a project manager. What are the resources up to? Who's underutilized? Who's overutilized? How do I map who are of the resources accordingly? This is task resource Gantt. The next thing that I want to talk about is fund management. But before I do that, I want to talk about the fund sources that we will be identifying at an enterprise level. So that for that, I go back to the home module. In the home module, we have something called fund management. Basically, what we are doing here is we are identifying the different fund sources that will fund all the projects that I have in the application. So in the global fund list, there are a set of fund sources that are identified. And for each of these fund sources, we have the fund type, fund category, everything provided. And these fund sources also go through a business process flow to get approved, right? Once these fund sources are approved, then we do fund transactions to transact some money in those fund sources. So these fund transactions are done to, for example, this fund source name is Fund Road and Bridge. $15 million is transacted to this fund and this record is approved. That means if I go to the global fund list and I search for road and bridge, this particular fund source has $14 million, out of which some amount has already been encumbered for individual projects. The remaining amount is $4 million. So, so this is first, these are the important things that you need to do. At an enterprise level, you need to identify the fund sources who will fund the different projects that are going to be part of your application. Then you do fund transaction to transact money into your fund source. So there is some number that is available in those fund sources. So when inside a particular project, when I am identifying out of the available 5 approved fund sources, my project is going to get funded by 2 of them. That is what I will be doing inside my project. So inside my project, when I go to Cover Street extension, there is a fund management folder there as well, right? So here, when I go extend the fund management, there are 3 forms. Project fund list is the first form. In this form, I am actually identifying out of those 5 approved funds at the global level, these are the 2 fund sources that will be funding my project. So I've done that. Once I do that, I approve this record. So once I do, there's no business process flow to it. So once I do this, yes, you approve it. And then you go to the fund transaction. The transaction you do here is different from the transaction you do in the global fund loss. Here, what you're doing is you're basically encumbering a certain amount from those identified fund sources to the project. So you saw that there was a $15 million transacted to that fund source, out of which only 4 million is available. That means the $11 million have been encumbered across various projects for their consumption. So in this case, for this project, there are 4 transactions that happened across these 2 fund sources, which have encumbered this much amount for this project. And these transactions got approved as well. Once I have encumbered it and I go back to the fund list, I would see different columns. You see encumbered amount, out of which if I have allocated some amount, there is allocation, unallocated, consumed, remaining. So these columns will get populated based on your expenses that get approved for the project, your contract pay estimates that get approved. All of that will start reflecting the numbers here. The funding rules is something that we need to be aware of. If there are multiple fund sources, when a contract item is consumed by the contractor, when the owner has to pay the contractor for that item, these rules will determine for that item to get paid, how much money has to come from fund source A, how much money has to come from fund source B, how much percentage rather. Let's say there is a 50-50 split for a rule. Fund source A will pay 50% of the contract value for their item's value. If their item costs $100, $50 will come from fund source A, $50 will come from fund source B. That rule is what we are defining here, and we are approving that. When a contract items are added inside a contract, funding rules should be applied for all of those items so that when the contractor is using the items and a pay estimate gets generated, the rules will determine how the funds are pulled from each of those fund sources. So that's the purpose of fund management within a project. The next thing
Now,
is budget management. But yeah, before I
quick
go
question.
forward, yes.
What if we have a project where we have federal funding for specific items, and we have a change order for which the new items added to the project are not federally funded?
Yeah.
Do I have to assign funding sources per item each time, or can I just do it to the new added items?
Yeah, you can create a new rule which would consume 100% from a state fund source.
Okay.
So any new item that you're adding, which you know that are not going to consume federal fund sources, you can assign the state fund source rule for all of those selected items. So anytime that item gets consumed by the contractor, the fund source that is going to fund that particular item will be a non-federal fund source.
Okay, and I mean, maybe I wasn't paying attention. We can generate reports that encompass all projects and see how much is encumbered per month or per year, correct? And how much is outstanding, what's closed out, and all.
Yes. So we have budget versus actual, right? So we have budget versus actual at an enterprise level. So budgets would tell for each project what is the approved budget, current budget, and actuals means what has been already consumed.
Okay.
So that will tell you whether the projects are on track or has there been an overshot of budget. So budget would have been $50,000 for a project, but you have already consumed $60,000. So there is a 5% increase. So that kind of a report that you can generate and see.
Okay.
Okay, great. So we looked at fund management inside a project. Next thing is budget management. So under budget management, we can create budget estimates. So budget estimates basically are the estimates of each item that is going to be part of your project at a high level. So let's say you have 5 different sections, which we have designed in phases, right? Your budget containers can be these 5 sections only. So planning can be your one line item in budget estimate. For that planning, let's say $50,000. Feasibility, $70,000. Design, $20,000. Construction, $250,000. Likewise, you can come up with the budget items related to the phases. For each item, you can provide a budget value. Once you have that, you can generate a forecast for it, which would help us linearly distribute the funds. So this way, I have the fund sources, I have the budget estimates here. So when I try to edit this budget, this will not let me edit it, but I'll give you an idea of how a budget estimate is looking. So I provided a name of the budget estimate, a type, a measurement system, all of that I provided. And this estimate total, I'm not entering here. When I create my budget estimate items, the sum total of all the item values are coming up to my budget value. So these are the different containers under which I have added those items. Each item will have its own unit price and quantity, and which adds up to the amount. And all of these get added to the total amount of the budget value. So this is my budget estimate, which gets approved. And when I go to the forecast of that particular budget estimate, that will tell me the spread of the forecast across the duration of the budget or duration of the project for the different phases that we have. When I go here and click forecast, when I select the particular line item, I have these different forecasts created, right? And each forecast will give me an idea of how the budget is spread out across the duration of the project. If I want to, I click the item details here. It gives me that spread. For some reason, in this particular environment, I'm not seeing the spread, but the environment that you have, it should show. Otherwise, your BAs will help you see that spread out here. Okay. So in this case, this is how you would be able to see the forecast linear spread. Once your budget estimate is approved, you will see the entire list of budget details in the current budget items. At any point, after the budget estimate is approved, you want to make changes to your budget, you do that through budget estimate revision. So through revision, you can change the budget value by adding newer budget items or modifying existing budget items or deleting an existing item. That will have an impact on the budget value, which will also go ahead and get reflected in your current budget. For a budget estimate revision also to get approved, you need to generate a forecast, and the forecast has to get approved. Once the forecast gets approved, your current budget value also gets updated. So that is the concept of budget estimate. You have your budget management report gallery as well, which gives you the budget estimate details, revision details, and current budget details. Usually, planning is what we do when we are doing all of this. You do your fund management, you do your budget management. These are all typically happening during your planning of a project. Once you decided that, okay, all of this is done, I have my budgets ready, I have my funds ready, now let me get started with the actual construction process. Before you do so, you would start with your bid management. Any questions? Okay, I'll proceed. Under bid estimate information, when you click that information, when you click that link, you will see an empty list page here. When you click new and create your new bid estimate, you will enter your estimate ID, name, all the other important information, and you save the record. Once you save the record, you will get a folder structure like this with all the individual forms within that particular bid estimate created. First, you would start with bid items. Here, when you did your budget items, you had a fair idea of what all will go under it, but you would still not have a clear idea of exact line items you would want to add because you're still budgeting. Now, this is the place where your engineers, in-house engineers, will build your engineer's estimate with each line item called out. So this estimate is your accurate estimate. Every line item will be listed here under each container. That would add up to the total value of this bid estimate. This estimate will be first locked. Once this estimate is locked, this estimate has to be approved. Once the estimate is approved, then this will be ready to get let out. If you have not locked and not approved, you will not see the new button in the lettings page at all. Because these items are locked and approved, I see the lettings page new button. Now we already have a bid awarded. That's why you don't see any option to do another bid letting or another. When you are doing this bid letting for the first time, you will see these options. Yes?
No, Lionel, we're going to be we're going to be awarding bids via Bid Express. We're not going to be
Perfect.
putting
Okay.
out bids through Aurigo. So
Okay.
would this be something that our internal staff will have to basically put in? Right. And secondly, the bid estimates, the initial engineer's estimate is going to be, we don't have any, Steve and I are the only engineers employed
Okay.
by SJTA.
Okay.
Our engineers are consulting staff, right? And we have project managers that manage the consulting staff. So would the consulting staff that are external entities be able to create the engineer's estimates for projects?
It purely depends on what type of roles that you have assigned for those individuals. If they are provided the for responsibility to create the records here, they will do so. It's the decision by the organization. It's as simple as that. If you do not want them to have the permission, then the roles that are assigned to them will have the limitations added to it. The individuals who are in-house, their responsibility will be to add this information. Having said that, again, if you decide to not add build-related information within essentials completely, and you want that information to come from a third-party system, and a BA, if our BA is working with you to do that, the suggestion that they may come up with is completely do away with the bid estimate section. They might directly import the awarded bid detail into the contract.
I think that's the best
Yes.
best way to go.
Yes. So in that case, the integration system would actually import the awarded contracts into the contracts list page.
Okay.
So the how it's going to be defined will be up to the BA, but functionally, this is the feasibility.
Yeah, because what I want to do is have our designers design the project and get everything ready for going out to bid, and then we take it out, basically take it out of the system. Our purchasing department would handle the bidding, and
Right.
after we're done with the bidding and we have the low bidder that we award the contract to, then we can go back into Aurigo.
Yes. So that means that your bid is already awarded, the contractors are identified, and now Aurigo's essentials would be used to manage contracts. So when it comes to that, the contract details will be added here. And for each contract, we have a series of aspects that can be handled. Like I mentioned, similar to a project's document folder structure, we can have a document folder structure for contracts as well, right? And we have a group of forms under configurations, these are very simple forms. Under settings, you provide the owner detail, not mandatory. It's a good to have captured information. Contract calendar, similar to your project calendar. If you want to maintain a specific calendar for your contract, that can be done. When a contract gets created, this option is selected. Once it is selected, it appears in the contract calendar form. Contractors, you might have prime contractor, you might have some subcontractors for the particular contract. All of that would have been decided outside Aurigo's essentials. When that information has to be pulled in, it can either be added manually or through any integration that the BA suggests. Okay. Any key contacts that you need to capture for this particular contract, that can be added here. Once these basic informations are entered, the most important form for contract management is contract items. The bids that are awarded, all the items are pulled into this particular form called contract item list page. Each container will have its own item with the the quantity and unit price called out. And you would notice that every item has a funding rule association. This is important so that when the item is consumed and the pay estimate is generated, system knows from which fund source this amount has to be deducted or encumbered rather, or consumed rather. Okay. So once this list of items are loaded here, and we have a contract value determined, and we feel these items are the final list of items, I want to go ahead and start the work. So you lock the items. The moment you lock the items, your new button in the progress tracking aspects get opened up. Then we have your form called daily progress reports. This form is usually used to capture the daily progress of information that happens in the work site. It can be various things. And I try creating new, you will see the different sections in which you can capture information. General information, weather conditions, traffic information, contractors on-site time, equipment used on the particular day, resources that are used, consumed, the materials that are consumed. All of this can be captured as part of your daily progress report. It happens every day, submitted, approved. So this form, it helps you capture the daily work that happened. There is another form called item postings. It helps you capture the items that are consumed to do the work that was captured in the DPR. So this particular form is very clearly capturing only the items that are part of the contract. There might be an item which has a quantity of 50, out of which that particular day, 3 of the item quantity would have been consumed. So in the item postings, they will come, click add, pick the item, and provide the actually posted quantity. So the total quantity may be 1. In this case, let's say the total quantity was 50. You can provide the posted quantity as 3. Remaining quantity will calculated as 47. The unit price will get accordingly calculated, and you can go ahead and approve this record. Once, let's say there are a series of item posting records that get up. Yeah, go ahead.
And so who would be putting this in? Like, would the contractor be inserting values in there that, hey, I completed X linear feet of curb today. The inspector would be agreeing to that or approving that, and then the construction manager will be approving that. Then we get to basically approve that for payment. Is that how
If that's the business process that you want to implement for item postings, it can be done. So when the creation process can be restricted only to the contractors, once they create the record, the approval process can be restricted only to the individuals who are in-house, so that the contractors don't have the approval business process to enable for them.
Okay.
So that is part of configuration, but I'm saying that is feasible. And there are organizations in the past who have opted to not let contractors come into the system at all. So the details will be collected from the contractors, and an in-house representative who represents the contractors would enter this information within Essentials. So that has also happened in the past. I'm just giving you that option.
Okay.
All right. So let's say there are a series of item posting records that are approved, and you need to go ahead and do the payments for it. There are two options we have here: materials on hand and pay estimates. I'll start with pay estimates and then go back to materials on hand. What is pay estimate? I'm not sure how often do you generate pay estimates in your organization. Typically, it can be fortnightly, weekly, monthly, however you want to do it. Item postings are done every day. DPRs are done every day. For pay estimates, the critical point is item postings. So every day item postings are generated. When you're generating a pay estimate, you pick a from date and a to date. Within that duration, whatever item postings that are approved will be generated, will be part of this pay estimate. So when a pay estimate gets generated, it calculates the number of items that are consumed based on the approved pay item postings, and will calculate the total amount that needs to be released to the contractor. In this pay estimate, you can determine whether you need to retain certain percentage in each bill that will be retained. Once you do that, in an inevitable circumstance or in an unfortunate circumstance that the contractor has to terminate the contract with the owner, the retainage amount can be used as a backup. Let's say 50% of the work is done, the contractor has canceled the contract. The contractor, if it is paid fully, the contractor would not lose anything, but the owner would lose the time, and they need to spend again time to find another contractor. So the retainage percentage can be used there. So that is something that we Essentials provides you the ability to do so. So once the pay estimates are approved, the amount gets consumed, and that reflects in the fund sources as well. Materials on hand. The term indicates that if the contractor wants to get an advance payment from the owner for certain items, then the owner generates this bill for let's say out of the 50 items for one of the item, 50 quantities that of one of the item, 25 quantities contractor wants advance payment for. So they will create a materials on hand record for that particular item for 25 quantities. Then the contractor, whenever they consume that item later on, before they start consuming, they need to get the amount paid by the owner so that they can go and purchase that item. So the immediate, once the material on hand gets approved, the immediate next pay estimate that gets generated Along with the item posting records that are generated during that period, the recently approved materials on hand record will also get added to the pay estimate and will be paid off to the contractor. So for the 25 items, the amount will be paid off to the contractor as advance payment. The contractor starts consuming those items. So whenever they consume that item, which falls within that 25 quantity, the amount will be deducted from the pay estimate the next time a pay estimate gets generated. So advance payment is done through materials on an approval, and the next time the items gets consumed, the advance recovery starts happening in the subsequent bills that get generated. That's the concept of materials on hand, and that's pretty much what we do as part of your contract management's billings and payments. If this is the process, if everything goes smooth, and then a final pay estimate gets generated, all the pending dues and pending recovery amounts will get released out, and the final pay estimate gets approved. But we all know for a fact that change orders are a new norm. So if a change order has to happen, which impacts the scope of the contract, duration of the contract, the items that are going to be part of the contract, anything that happens part of the change order can be done through contract change order. When a contract change order is initiated, the existing contract value can change, existing contract duration can change, or just the scope can change. Once the change order is approved, the contract value gets updated, and the newer items, if they get added, that will be available for item posting. If any item gets deleted, unless and until that item is not consumed, you can delete the items through change order. If that item was already consumed and you are trying to delete it through a change order, it will not allow you to do so. That's the restriction that we have put in the system directly. So the change order gets approved, the items get changed in the contract item form, then the process continues. If there is any pending amount that is either, let's say the contractor says that out of $100 million, the contractor was able to complete the work with $99 million. So there is a 1 million amount that is still pending in your fund source, which you have encumbered from your global fund sources. That amount needs to be sent back. So you can do a balance change order to balance out any overuse, there is any pending amount that needs to be sent out, or anything that you have paid extra that needs to be pulled in from the fund sources, global fund sources. That can be done using balance change order. Once all of this is called, excuse me, once all of this is calculated and completed, you can generate your final pay estimate and finish the payment completion for that particular contract. Once the final pay estimate is done, you can also do your contract closure. So that way your contract can be closed. This is one contract. Likewise, you can have multiple contracts in your project. All the contracts can be closed in the same way. There may be expenses that are not related to construction contract, which can be created as part of purchase orders, against which expenses can be claimed. Against each of those purchase orders, once the expenses are approved, amount gets consumed from the encumbered amount. So that is happening outside the contractors folder, which is happening under commitments and expenses. Two forms, purchase order and expenses. Purchase order is similar to your item postings. Expenses is similar to your pay estimates. It's just that we are doing it outside contract, and the expenses are related to non-contract items or non-concession related items. That's the only difference, and it doesn't have an elaborate workflow like we have inside construction contract. So these are for simpler expenses that you want to track within a project. These also have an impact on the fund sources that we have encumbered and consumed. Once all of this is done, you can use your project closeout checklist to monitor whether you have completed all the elements that are related to the the project. Once that closeout checklist is complete, you can officially consider your project also as closed. So that is typically a flow of the flow of the project. And that's what we defined in this structure. We talked about creating a project. We talked about funds, schedules, expenses, risks, and issues. And we also talked about budgets related to a project. We talked about bid management. We talked about contract management. We talked about change management and ultimate closure of the contract as well. So that brings us to the end of an end-to-end business process flow. As key takeaway, what we discussed the benefits of essentials, the user interface, the different screen elements that we looked at, and the various modules that we had available for Essentials. We also looked at how to set up a project, the concept of user management, the roles, permissions, invitation of a project to a user, all of that, which are very critical to get you started. And we talked about how to set up a project, the concept of document management within a project and a contract, and various platform features like enterprise search, document search, workflows, my reports, all of that, sorry, ad hoc reports, all of that we looked at. And we also looked at some pre-configured information that comes with Essential, like your roles, permissions, library data, workflow, all of that are pre-configured with ability for the administrators to configure it further. We finished it by talking about the end-to-end flow of information, right from creation of the project and then managing a contract and closing a project. With that, we have come to the end of today's session as well.